Daniel Hayes was 17 seconds away from losing everything when the billion-dollar company's systems crashed around him. Executives who had mocked him an hour earlier now watched in frozen silence as his fingers flew across the keyboard, his 7-year-old daughter sitting quietly beside him with her crayons. They had laughed when he walked into their glass tower holding her hand, wearing clothes that had seen too many washes and carrying the weight of 2 years spent fighting alone. Now the same people who said a single father could never belong in their world needed him to save it. If you're watching this, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The lobby of Sterling Dynamics smelled like money and cold ambition. Daniel Hayes noticed it the moment the revolving doors spat him and Chloe into the marble canyon of the reception area, where everything gleamed too bright and the air conditioning hummed with the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about the electric bill. "Daddy, it's cold," Chloe whispered, pressing closer to his leg. "I know, baby. Just for a little while, okay? Keep cold, boy." He adjusted his grip on her hand and felt the familiar weight of judgment before he even looked up. 2 women in designer suits stood near the elevator bank, their conversation dying the second they spotted him. One of them actually took a step back, like poverty might be contagious. Daniel had worn his best shirt. It was 5 years old and the collar had started to fray, but he'd ironed it 3 times that morning until the creases looked sharp. His pants were clean. His shoes were the same ones he'd worn to Emily's funeral, polished until the cracks in the leather didn't show unless you looked close. He'd shaved. He'd tried. It still wasn't enough for a place like this. "Is that guy here for the janitorial position?" Someone muttered behind them. "He brought a kid to Sterling Dynamics. Can you imagine?" Chloe's fingers tightened around his. She was 7 years old and already knew the sound of people deciding you weren't worth their time. "Don't listen," Daniel said quietly, leading her toward the reception desk where a young woman with perfect makeup and a name tag that said, Jessica was typing something on her computer with fingernails that probably cost more than his last paycheck. "Excuse me, Daniel said. "I'm here for the 2 o'clock interview." Daniel Hayes. Jessica looked up, and her expression went through about 4 different emotions in 2 seconds flat. Surprise, confusion, something that might have been pity. Then she landed on professional courtesy, which was worse than all of them. "Mr. Hayes?" "Yes." And she glanced down at Chloe, who was gripping her stuffed elephant and trying very hard to be invisible. "I wasn't aware children would be present." Her babysitter got sick this morning. I couldn't reschedule. The lie came out smooth because he'd practiced it 6 times on the bus ride over. The truth, that he couldn't afford a babysitter and his neighbor, who usually watched Chloe for free, was at her daughter's wedding, wasn't the kind of thing you admitted in a place where everyone's coffee probably cost $12. "I see." Jessica's smile had gone tight at the corners. "Well, the interview is on the 17th floor. Conference room B. You'll need these visitor badges." She slid 2 lanyards across the desk like she was handling evidence from a crime scene. "The elevator is to your right." "Thank you. C'est it." Daniel hung the larger badge around his neck and knelt down to slip the smaller one over Chloe's head. She looked up at him with those huge brown eyes that were so much like Emily's, it sometimes hurt to breathe. "You okay, Bug?" "Yeah." "You remember what we talked about?" "Sit quiet and draw my pictures. Don't bother anybody." "That's my girl." He kissed her forehead and stood up, ignoring the way his knees protested. 32 years old, and he already moved like he was 50. That's what happened when you worked 3 jobs and slept 4 hours a night for 2 years straight. They crossed the lobby toward the elevators, and Daniel felt every eye in the room tracking them. The security guard watching from behind his desk. The cluster of employees waiting near the coffee station with their reusable cups and their wireless earbuds. The man in the $1,000 suit who actually stopped mid-stride to stare. Daniel kept his head up and his hand steady on Chloe's shoulder. He'd survived worse than judgment from strangers. The elevator doors opened, revealing a woman in a charcoal blazer with dark hair pulled back in a way that screamed authority. She was maybe 30, with sharp cheekbones and the kind of stillness that made you think twice before speaking. Her eyes swept over Daniel and Chloe, and for a second, just a second, something shifted in her expression. Not pity, something harder to name. "Going up?" she asked. 17th floor. She nodded and stepped aside to make room. Daniel and Chloe entered the elevator, and the woman pressed the button for 17 without being asked. Then she pressed one for 32. The doors closed, sealing them in with their reflections and the quiet hum of machinery. "Job interview?" the woman asked. Daniel glanced at her, caught off guard. "Yeah, how'd you know?" "The badges. And you look nervous." "That obvious?" "Only a little." There was something almost amused in her voice, but not in a mean way, just observant. "What position?" "Senior systems analyst, I think. The job posting wasn't super clear." "Sterling Dynamics isn't always great at clear communication." "You work here?" "Something like that." She glanced down at Chloe, who was staring at the elevator buttons like they were the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. "Babysitter fell through? What is?" Daniel felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. "Yeah." "Tough break." "We've had worse." The elevator chimed, 17th floor. The doors slid open onto a hallway that was somehow even more aggressively corporate than the lobby. Glass walls. Modern art that didn't mean anything. Motivational posters about synergy and innovation, and other words that sounded important but were mostly bullshit. "Good luck," the woman said. "Thanks." Daniel and Chloe stepped out, and the doors closed behind them with a soft whisper of finality. Conference room B turned out to be a glass box at the end of the hall, where 3 people sat around a table that could have comfortably seated 20. 2 men and a woman, all of them somewhere in their 40s. All of them radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to choose between groceries and rent. Daniel knocked on the doorframe. "Mr. Hayes?" The older of the 2 men stood up. He had silver hair and a suit that probably cost what Daniel used to make in a month. "I'm Richard Cromwell, VP of Technology. This is Linda Park, our Director of Human Resources, and Gerald Voss, Head of Systems Security. Nice to meet you." Daniel shook their hands, feeling the weight of their assessment in every second of eye contact. Then he looked down at Chloe. "This is my daughter, Chloe. I apologize for bringing her, but—" "Family emergency," Richard said, in a tone that suggested he didn't believe it for a second. Jessica mentioned, "Please, sit." There were exactly 4 chairs around the near end of the table. Daniel pulled one out for Chloe and helped her climb up, then set her backpack on the floor beside her. She pulled out her coloring book and crayons without being asked, already folding into herself the way she did when strange adults were watching. Daniel sat down and clasped his hands on the table, trying to ignore the way Gerald Voss was staring at Chloe like she was a bomb that might go off. "So," Linda said, flipping open a folder with Daniel's resume inside. "Let's get started. Mr. Hayes, I have to say, your application caught our attention. MIT graduate. 5 years at Apex Security Solutions. Impressive background, but there's a significant gap in your employment history. Nearly 2 years. Can you explain that?" "Boy." Here it was. The question he'd known was coming. "My wife was sick," Daniel said, keeping his voice level. "Cancer. I took leave to care for her and our daughter. She passed away 2 years ago." The room went quiet in that particular way that meant everyone was uncomfortable but trying not to show it. "I'm sorry for your loss," Linda said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. "And since then, what have you been doing?" "Working. Different jobs. Warehouse shifts. Delivery driving. Freelance IT repair. Whatever I could get that let me be home for Chloe." Gerald leaned forward, frowning. "So you haven't maintained your skills in systems security?" "I've maintained them, just not in a traditional employment setting." "Mr. Hayes." Richard's voice had gone cool. "Sterling Dynamics is one of the most demanding environments in the tech industry. We're talking 60-hour weeks minimum, high-stress situations, constant travel. Does that sound compatible with single parenthood?" The words hit like a slap, and Daniel felt something cold and sharp twist in his chest. "I can handle the work," he said. "Can you?" Gerald tapped the folder with one finger. "Because what I'm seeing is someone who prioritized family over career for 2 years and is now trying to jump back in at a senior level. That's not how this industry works." "With all due respect, let me be frank," Gerald interrupted. "We need people who can commit fully, no distractions, no divided attention. You brought your daughter to this interview, Mr. Hayes. What happens when there's a crisis at 3 in the morning and you have to choose between your job and picking her up from school? I choose her. The words came out before Daniel could stop them, and the temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. I see, Richard said slowly. Well, that's certainly honest. It's the truth. My daughter comes first. She always will. But that doesn't mean I can't do my job. It means I'm going to do it better than anyone else in this building because I have something to work for. Daniel leaned forward, meeting their eyes one by one. You want to know about the gap in my resume? Here's what happened. My wife got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer when Chloe was 5. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 10. I spent those 10 months making sure she wasn't alone, making sure Chloe had at least one parent who was present, and making sure Emily didn't die terrified and in pain. After she passed, I spent 2 years rebuilding a life for my daughter. I worked 3 jobs. I slept on a friend's couch until I could afford a 1-bedroom apartment. I taught myself to braid hair and cook more than just pasta, and help with homework and all the other things I'd never had to do alone before. His voice had started to shake, and he forced himself to take a breath. You think that makes me weak? You think that makes me unreliable? I have shown up every single day for 2 years with nothing left in the tank and still found a way to keep going. So yeah, maybe I don't have the traditional resume you're looking for. Maybe I can't promise I'll work 80 hours a week and sleep under my desk. But I can promise that if you hire me, you'll get someone who knows what it means to fight when everything's already fallen apart. And honestly, I think that's worth a hell of a lot more than someone who's never had to choose. The silence that followed was absolute. Linda was staring at him with something that might have been respect. Richard looked uncomfortable. Gerald's expression had gone carefully blank, which was somehow worse than contempt. Then Gerald spoke. That's a very touching story, Mr. Hayes, but this is a business, not a charity. We need employees who can focus on the company's needs, not their personal struggles. I think we're done here. The words landed like a door slamming shut. Daniel felt Chloe's hand slide into his under the table, her small fingers cold and trembling. Thank you for your time, he managed. His voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. He stood up, and Chloe scrambled down from her chair, shoving her coloring book and crayons back into her backpack with shaking hands. Daniel wanted to say something else, wanted to tell them they were making a mistake, that they'd regret this, that he was better than they'd ever know, but the words wouldn't come. They were halfway to the door when the world exploded. Every screen in the conference room flashed red. The overhead lights flickered. Somewhere down the hall, an alarm started shrieking, and the emergency lighting kicked on, bathing everything in crimson. Richard shot to his feet. What the hell? His phone buzzed. Linda's buzzed. Gerald's computer chimed with what sounded like 100 notifications at once. Gerald's face went white. We're locked out. Everything. The entire network is down. That's impossible, Richard snapped. We have redundancies, firewalls, intrusion detection. It's all offline. Look. Gerald spun his laptop around, and Daniel could see it from where he stood. A black screen with a single line of green text. Sterling Dynamics. Your move. It's an attack, Linda whispered. The door burst open and a young woman in a tech support polo practically fell into the room. Mr. Cromwell, we need you in the command center. Everything's going down. Servers, backups, client databases. We're losing millions by the second, and nobody can stop it. Richard was already moving, Gerald and Linda right behind him. The woman disappeared back into the hallway, and Daniel heard voices shouting, phones ringing, more alarms joining the chorus. He stood there with Chloe pressed against his side, watching the chaos unfold through the glass walls. And that's when he saw it. The code on Gerald's laptop. Just a glimpse before the screen went dark. But it was enough. He knew that malware. He'd seen it before, 3 years ago, when he was still at Apex. They'd called it Phantom Protocol, a custom-designed worm that could slip through almost any security system if you knew how to deploy it. Daniel had written the original countermeasures himself, back before everything fell apart, back before the same executives who'd commissioned that work had turned around and stolen it when he took leave to care for Emily. Daddy? Chloe's voice was small and scared. What's happening? I don't know, baby, but we should probably get out of here. Except he didn't move. Because if that was Phantom Protocol, or something based on it, then Sterling Dynamics was in serious trouble. The malware was designed to propagate exponentially, locking down systems faster than any conventional response could contain. By the time their security team figured out what they were dealing with, the damage would be catastrophic. And Daniel was maybe the only person in this building who knew how to stop it. Mr. Hayes? He turned and found himself facing the woman from the elevator. Up close, she was younger than he'd thought, but there was something in her eyes that made her seem older. Wiser. Like she'd seen things break and knew how to keep moving anyway. "You're still here," she said. "We were just leaving. You saw the screen, the malware. It wasn't a question." Daniel nodded slowly, wondering how she could possibly know that. "Do you recognize it?" she asked. "Maybe. Why?" "Because I need someone who can fix this." She glanced down at Chloe, then back at Daniel. "And I think you're that person. You don't even know me. I know you just defended yourself to a panel of executives who were never going to give you a fair shot. I know you brought your daughter to a job interview because you didn't have another choice, and you kept your head up anyway. And I know you're still standing here instead of running for the exit." Her expression was absolutely serious. "That tells me everything I need to know. Who are you?" "Vanessa Sterling. I own this company, and right now I'm asking for your help." Quote. The command center was pure chaos. It occupied the entire 18th floor, a massive open space filled with workstations and server banks and screens displaying real-time data from every corner of Sterling Dynamics' global network. Except right now, half those screens were black or flashing error messages, and the people crowded around them looked about 2 minutes away from a collective breakdown. Daniel walked in carrying Chloe, and every head in the room swiveled toward him. "Who the hell is that?" someone demanded. "Daniel Hayes," Vanessa said calmly. "He's going to help us. Ma'am, with all due respect, we have protocols. Your protocols are failing. Every second we waste arguing, we lose more data, more money, more clients." Vanessa's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Mr. Hayes identified the malware in under 10 seconds. That's more than anyone here has managed. Us." Gerald Voss appeared from somewhere in the back, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. "You can't be serious. This man has no clearance, no security vetting, and he brought a child into a crisis situation. This man is the only lead we have, so either help him or get out of his way." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. The silence. Daniel set Chloe down carefully, making sure she was steady on her feet. "Bug, I need you to sit over here, okay? Stay away from the computers and don't touch anything. Can you do that for me?" "Okay, Daddy." He walked her to a chair near the wall, well away from the frantic activity, and pulled out her backpack. "Color me something nice, yeah?" "What if you need me? Then I'll come get you, I promise. Egon?" Chloe nodded and hugged her elephant tight, and Daniel felt his chest clench with the sheer unfairness of making a 7-year-old sit through this. But there was nowhere else for her to go, and he wasn't leaving her alone. He turned back to the room and found Vanessa waiting. "Tell me what you need," she said. "Access to your primary security terminal, full admin rights. And everyone needs to stop running random diagnostics before they make this worse." "You heard him," Vanessa called out. "Step away from the terminals, now." There was grumbling, but people moved. Daniel walked to the largest workstation, where multiple monitors displayed a cascading failure in real time. He sat down, cracked his knuckles, and started typing. The interface was different from what he remembered at Apex, but the underlying architecture was similar. He navigated through access logs, system files, network traffic, looking for the signature patterns he'd spent months studying 3 years ago. "What are you doing?" Gerald asked from behind him, sounding like he was barely holding on to civility. "Tracing the infection vector. This malware doesn't just attack from outside, it needs an entry point inside your network. Someone opened a door. That's impossible. We have the best security in the industry." "Clearly not." Daniel's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up server logs from the past 6 hours. "There. Someone on your executive team received a phishing email at 11:47 this morning. Opened an attachment labeled Q3_earnings_report.pdf. The malware deployed 30 seconds later." "Which executive?" Vanessa asked sharply. Daniel pulled up the email address. Richard Cromwell. Gerald swore under his breath. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. How do we stop it? She asked. I need to find the command and control node. The malware is smart. It hides inside legitimate traffic, so you can't just cut the network. But if I can isolate the node, I can sever the connection and kill the propagation. How long will that take? Depends on how deep it's buried. Well, Daniel dove back into the code, following threads through layers of encryption and misdirection. This was the part of the job he'd always loved, back when he still had a career. The puzzle solving, the hunt, the moment when everything clicked into place, and you saw the pattern nobody else could see. His hands moved on instinct, and the rest of the room faded into background noise. He's actually doing it, someone whispered. Quiet, Vanessa said. Daniel found the first node hidden inside a backup server cluster. He isolated it, shut it down, and watched the malware reroute. Smart. It had redundancies. Of course it did. He found the second node 12 seconds later. Killed it. The malware rerouted again, but this time he was ready. He tracked the traffic to a third node, then a fourth, mapping the entire network like a spider's web. Daddy? Chloe's voice cut through his focus, and Daniel looked up to see her standing beside him, holding out a piece of paper. One of her drawings, 2 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun. It's us, she whispered. So you don't forget. Something cracked open inside his chest, and for a second, he couldn't breathe. I won't forget, baby. Thank you. She smiled and went back to her chair, and Daniel turned back to the screen with his daughter's drawing tucked beside the keyboard. He found the 5th node, the 6th, the 7th, and then he saw it. The central command server buried so deep in the system it was almost invisible, the malware's heart. Got you, Daniel muttered. He wrote a script in under 30 seconds, something quick and dirty that would sever every connection simultaneously so the malware couldn't reroute again. Then he hovered his hand over the enter key. This is it, he said. Once I hit this, either everything comes back online or I make it worse. No guarantees. Do it, Vanessa said without hesitation. Daniel pressed enter. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then every screen in the command center lit up green. Systems rebooted. Servers came back online. The alarms shut off one by one, leaving behind a ringing silence that felt louder than the chaos. Someone started clapping, then someone else. Then the entire room erupted in applause and relieved laughter and shouted exclamations of disbelief. Daniel sat back in the chair, feeling like he'd just run a marathon. 17 seconds, Vanessa said quietly. She was standing beside him, looking at the timestamp on his final command. You stopped a multi-million-dollar attack in 17 seconds. Closer to 20 if you count the time I spent staring at the enter key. Still impressive. She studied him for a long moment. You knew that malware, not just how to stop it. You knew it. Yeah. Want to tell me why? Daniel glanced across the room at Chloe, who was coloring peacefully with her crayons, oblivious to the fact that her father had just saved an entire company. Not here, he said. Vanessa's office was on the 32nd floor, behind a door that required 3 separate security clearances to open. The space itself was surprisingly understated. Clean lines, minimal furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. No motivational posters, no corporate art. Just a desk, some chairs, and a couch where Chloe immediately curled up with her elephant and fell asleep. Daniel stood by the window watching the sun sink behind the skyline, feeling the adrenaline finally start to fade. You want to explain what just happened? Vanessa asked. She'd taken off her blazer and rolled up her sleeves, looking more human than she had downstairs. I used to work for a company called Apex Security Solutions, Daniel said. We specialized in cybersecurity for high-value clients. About 3 years ago, we developed a custom malware for penetration testing, something that could slip through most conventional defenses so we could show clients where their vulnerabilities were. We called it Phantom Protocol. And that's what hit us today. A version of it, yeah. Modified, but the core structure is the same. I recognize the signature. He turned away from the window. After my wife got sick, I took leave. 6 months. I thought Apex would understand. They said they did. Then I came back and found out they'd stolen my research, sold it to competitors, and fired me for performance issues. They blacklisted me across the industry. By the time Emily passed, I couldn't get hired anywhere. Vanessa was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. They stole your work and destroyed your career because you chose to care for your dying wife. Yeah, that's unconscious. That's corporate America. Not everywhere. Vanessa walked to her desk and pulled out a tablet, typing something quickly. I'm going to ask you a question, Mr. Hayes, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you want to work for Sterling Dynamics? Daniel blinked. What? You just saved this company from a catastrophic attack using knowledge and skills that nobody else here possesses. You did it while being insulted by my executives and caring for your daughter. That tells me you're exactly the kind of person I need on my team. She looked at him steadily. So I'm offering you a job. Head of cybersecurity, full benefits, competitive salary, and flexibility to manage your responsibilities as a parent. What do you say? Whoa. Set. Daniel's brain stuttered, trying to process what he was hearing. You're serious? Completely. You don't even know me. I know you brought your daughter to a job interview in clothes you've probably been wearing for 5 years because you needed work, and you didn't give up. I know you identified a sophisticated attack in seconds and fixed it while half my employees were still panicking. I know you could have walked away and let us burn, but you didn't. Vanessa set the tablet down. That's enough. Your executives won't like it. My executives don't run this company. I do. Geekes. Daniel looked over at Chloe, still asleep on the couch, with her drawings scattered around her. He thought about the last 2 years, the exhaustion, the fear, the endless cycle of barely keeping their heads above water. If I take this job, he said slowly, I need you to understand something. Chloe comes first, always. If there's a crisis at 3 a.m. and she needs me, I'm leaving. If she's sick, I'm staying home. If there's a school event, I'm going. I don't care how important the meeting is or how much money is on the line. She comes first. I wouldn't expect anything else. I mean it. And so do I. Vanessa extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Daniel stared at her hand for a long moment. Then he shook it, feeling something settle in his chest that might have been hope. Yeah, he said. We have a deal. He's him. Daniel's first day at Sterling Dynamics started at 6 a.m. with Chloe standing in the bathroom doorway watching him shave. You look different, she said, holding her elephant under one arm. Different how? Less tired. Daniel caught his reflection in the mirror and realized she was right. The permanent shadow under his eyes hadn't disappeared, but something in his face had shifted, like maybe he'd remembered what it felt like to stand up straight. We got lucky, Bug. Okay. You saved them, Chloe corrected. That lady said so. Vanessa had walked them out of the building 3 days ago, past the employees who'd stared at Daniel like he'd just materialized out of thin air. She'd shaken his hand in the lobby and told him to take the weekend to think about logistics, childcare, transportation, whatever he needed to make this work. He'd spent the weekend half convinced she'd change her mind. But yesterday morning, an email had arrived with his employment contract, benefits package, and a start date of Monday at 8. The salary made him sit down hard on the edge of his bed and stare at the number until the screen went dark. It was more money than he'd made in the last 2 years combined. Come on, Daniel said, rinsing the razor. We need to drop you at school early today. Can I bring my drawing? Which one? The one I made for you, with us holding hands. Oh, something warm expanded behind Daniel's ribs. Yeah, baby. Bring whatever you want. They took the bus because Daniel still didn't trust the 12-year-old Honda sitting in front of their apartment building to make it across the city without breaking down. Chloe pressed her face to the window and watched the building slide past, her backpack clutched on her lap. Daddy? Yeah? Is this going to be like before, when Mommy was sick? Daniel's chest tightened. What do you mean? You're going to be gone a lot again, at work. He pulled the cord for their stop and stood up, taking Chloe's hand as they stepped off onto the sidewalk. The elementary school was 2 blocks away, a low brick building with a playground that had seen better days. It's not going to be like before, Daniel said, kneeling down so they were eye to eye. I promise. This job is different. The lady who hired me, Ms. Sterling, she knows you're the most important thing. If you need me, I'm coming home, no matter what. You promise? Cross my heart? Chloe studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, bantab. They walked the rest of the way hand in hand, and Daniel signed her in at the front desk before kissing her goodbye. She ran off toward her classroom with her elephant bouncing against her back, and Daniel stood there watching until she disappeared around the corner. Then he caught the next bus to Sterling Dynamics and tried not to throw up from nerves. The building looked different in the morning light, less intimidating, more like just another place where people showed up to work. Daniel walked through the revolving doors and half expected security to stop him, but the guard just nodded and waved him through. His badge worked on the first try. The elevator took him to the 18th floor, where the command center had been transformed from a disaster zone into something that almost looked organized. People sat at workstations drinking coffee and typing on keyboards, and nobody screamed or ran in circles. Progress. Mr. Hayes. Daniel turned and found Vanessa walking toward him with a tablet under one arm. She was wearing another blazer, this one dark blue, and her hair was pulled back in the same no-nonsense style. Morning, Daniel said. How are you feeling? Like I might be dreaming. You're not. Come on, I'll show you your office. She led him down a hallway to a corner space with actual walls and a door that closed. Inside was a desk, 2 monitors, a chair that looked like it cost more than his rent, and a window overlooking the city. This is mine? Daniel asked. It's yours. We're still setting up your access credentials, but IT should have you fully operational by noon. In the meantime, I need you to meet the team. The team? Your team. You're head of cybersecurity now. That comes with people. Daniel followed her back into the command center, where about 15 employees were clustered near the coffee station. They looked up when Vanessa approached, and the conversation died instantly. Everyone, this is Daniel Hayes. He's taking over the cybersecurity division effective immediately. Daniel stopped the Phantom Protocol attack last week, and he'll be implementing new security protocols moving forward. I expect full cooperation. Vanessa's tone left no room for argument. Daniel, this is your team. Get to know them. Then she walked away, leaving Daniel standing there with 15 pairs of eyes locked on him. Nobody spoke. Finally, a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and glasses stepped forward. I'm Karen Reeves, Senior Network Engineer. I've been here 9 years. Nice to meet you. Is it true you figured out the attack in under a minute? Something like that. And you have a kid? Daniel tensed, waiting for the judgment. Yeah, a daughter. She's 7. Karen smiled. Good. Maybe you'll actually remember the rest of us have lives outside this place. The tension broke and a few people laughed. A younger guy with a beard raised his hand. Marcus Chen, I run penetration testing. Quick question. Are you going to make us work weekends? But only if the building's on fire. Fair enough. One by one, the team introduced themselves. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. A couple looked openly hostile. But Daniel figured that was par for the course when someone swooped in from nowhere and took the top job. All right, Daniel said when the introductions finished. Here's the deal. I'm not here to reinvent the wheel or pretend I know everything. You've been doing this longer than I've been in the building, and I respect that. But we just got hit by an attack that almost took the whole company down, and that means something's broken. So we're going to figure out what, and we're going to fix it. Questions? A hand went up in the back. Young guy, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Yeah. Did you really bring your kid to your job interview? The room went dead silent. Daniel met the guy's eyes. I did. That's pretty unprofessional. So is asking that question in front of your new boss, but here we are. A few people snickered. The guy's face went red, but he didn't say anything else. Anyone else? Daniel asked. Nobody moved. Good. Let's get to work. The morning passed in a blur of meetings, system audits, and introductions to people whose names Daniel forgot approximately 10 seconds after hearing them. By noon, his head was spinning and his coffee had gone cold, but his access credentials were live and he finally felt like he had a handle on what he'd walked into. The cybersecurity division was a mess. Not because the people were bad, they weren't. But the infrastructure was outdated, the protocols were inconsistent, and there were gaps in coverage big enough to drive a truck through. It was the kind of thing that happened when a company grew too fast and nobody wanted to slow down long enough to fix the foundation. Daniel made notes. Lots of notes. Around 1, His phone buzzed with a text from Chloe's school. Chloe says she doesn't feel good. Can you pick her up? Daniel's stomach dropped. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, texting back that he was on his way. He was halfway to the lobby when he ran into Gerald Voss coming out of a conference room. Hayes, where are you going? My daughter's sick. I need to pick her up. Gerald's expression soured. It's your first day. I'm aware. You can't just leave in the middle of the day. We have the security audit meeting at 2. Reschedule it. Excuse me? Daniel stopped walking and turned to face him fully. My daughter is sick. I'm picking her up. If that's a problem, take it up with Vanessa. This is exactly what I warned her about. Gerald snapped. You're unreliable. You can't commit. Hiring you was a mistake. Then fire me. Gerald's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything else. Daniel walked past him into the elevator and jabbed the button for the lobby harder than necessary. By the time he got to Chloe's school, she was sitting in the nurse's office with her elephant clutched to her chest and tears streaming down her face. Hey, Bug. What's wrong? My stomach hurts. Daniel pressed his hand to her forehead. No fever. Did you eat lunch? I couldn't. It hurt too much. The nurse appeared from behind her desk. She's been complaining since recess. No vomiting, no fever, but she's clearly uncomfortable. I'd keep her home the rest of the day, just to be safe. Yeah, okay, thanks. Daniel signed Chloe out and carried her to the bus stop, where she curled up against his chest and closed her eyes. She felt small and fragile, and Daniel hated how scared it made him every time she got sick. Like maybe this was the start of something worse. Like maybe he'd lose her the same way he'd lost Emily. You're gonna be okay, he murmured into her hair. I've got you. Back at the apartment, he got Chloe settled on the couch with a blanket and her favorite cartoon playing on the TV. Then he made her toast and ginger ale and sat beside her, one hand resting on her back while she nibbled at the edges of the bread. His phone buzzed. Vanessa. Heard you had to leave. Everything okay? Daniel typed back one-handed. Chloe's sick. Nothing serious, just keeping her home. The reply came fast. Take the rest of the day. See you tomorrow. Something loosened in Daniel's chest. No lecture, no guilt trip, just understanding. Daddy? Yeah, Bug? Are you going to get in trouble? No, I'm not going to get in trouble. Mister. Voss looked mad. Daniel glanced at her. You saw that? I heard you talking, in the hallway. He said you were a mistake. Anger flared hot and sharp in Daniel's gut. He's wrong. Are you sure? Yeah, baby, I'm sure. Chloe was quiet for a moment, then said, I don't want you to lose your job because of me. That's not going to happen. But what if it does? Daniel pulled her closer, feeling her heartbeat against his ribs. Listen to me. You are the most important thing in my life. You always have been. And if keeping you safe means I lose every job I'll ever have, then that's what happens. But I'm not going to lose this one, okay? Okay, She fell asleep 20 minutes later, curled up under the blanket with her elephant tucked under her chin. Daniel sat there watching her breathe, thinking about Gerald's face in the hallway and the way Vanessa had texted back without hesitation. Maybe this place really was different. Or maybe it wasn't, and he'd just gotten lucky with one person who understood. The next morning, Daniel arrived at 7 to find a note on his desk. My office, 7:30, V. 7. He knocked on Vanessa's door at exactly 7:28, and she called for him to come in without looking up from her computer. Close the door, she said. Daniel did, his stomach twisting. If this is about yesterday, it's not. Vanessa finally looked at him. Well, not directly. Sit. He sat. Gerald filed a formal complaint last night. He claims you're already demonstrating a pattern of unreliability and that hiring you was a lapse in judgment on my part. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was reading the weather report. He wants me to terminate your employment. Daniel felt the floor drop out from under him. Are you going to? No. The word was so immediate and certain that it took Daniel a second to process it. But I need you to understand something, Vanessa continued. Gerald isn't the only one who feels this way. You're new, you came in under unusual circumstances, and you've already left early on your first day. That makes people nervous. They're going to watch you closely, waiting for you to fail. So what do I do? Your job. Better than anyone expects. Show them you're not a risk. Show them you belong here. She leaned back in her chair. And ignore Gerald. He's been trying to undermine me since the day I became CEO. This isn't about you. It's about him wanting control. Why keep him around if he's a problem? Association lets him be. Because he's good at his job when he's not being petty, and I don't fire people for having egos. I fire them for incompetence. Vanessa's gaze sharpened. But if he comes after you again, I need to know. Understood? Understood. Good. Now go. You have a security audit to prepare. Daniel stood but paused at the door. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Backing me. You don't owe me anything. Vanessa was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. 3 years ago, I took over this company from my father. I was 30 years old. I'd never run anything bigger than a regional office, and every executive in the building thought I'd fail within 6 months. They didn't say it to my face, but I heard the whispers, I saw the looks, and I spent every day proving them wrong. She met his eyes. You remind me of that. Someone who's capable but underestimated. Someone people are too quick to dismiss. So yeah, I'm backing you. Don't make me regret it. I won't. Then we're done here. Daniel walked back to his office, feeling like he'd just been given a second chance at something he didn't know he'd lost. Over the next 2 weeks, he threw himself into the work with everything he had. He rewrote security protocols. He ran penetration tests on every system in the company. He identified vulnerabilities, patched holes, and built redundancies that would make another phantom protocol attack nearly impossible. He also worked 60-hour weeks and barely saw Chloe. It wasn't intentional. He tried to leave by 5 every day, but there was always one more thing to fix, one more meeting to attend, one more fire to put out. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, picked Chloe up from school most days, and Daniel would stumble home at 7 or 8 to find his daughter already fed and halfway through her homework. Daddy, you're late again, Chloe said one Thursday night, not looking up from her math worksheet. I know, Bug. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen made me dinner. That was nice of her. She's not you. The words hit like a punch, and Daniel sat down hard at the kitchen table. I know. Chloe finally looked at him, and her eyes were red. You said this job was going to be different. It is different. No, it's not. You're still gone all the time. Chloe, I hate it. I hate this stupid job, and I hate that you're never here, and I hate that you lied to me. She shoved her chair back and ran to her room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the walls. Daniel sat there alone in the kitchen, staring at the math worksheet, feeling like the worst father on the planet. He called Vanessa the next morning before he left for work. I need to cut back my hours, he said without preamble. There was a pause on the other end. What happened? Chloe's upset. I've been working too much and she feels like I'm abandoning her. I can't keep doing this. Okay. Okay? You're right. You've been here every day until 8 or 9, and that's not sustainable. Pull back. Leave at 5. Spend time with your daughter. Vanessa's voice was calm, practical. The work will still be here tomorrow. What about the audit? It'll get done. Daniel, I didn't hire you so you could burn out in a month. I hired you because you have skills this company needs and because you're a good father. Don't lose sight of that. Eat, eat. Daniel closed his eyes and felt something unclench in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just go take care of your kid. That afternoon, Daniel left the office at 4:30. He picked Chloe up from school himself, took her out for ice cream, and spent the evening helping her build a blanket fort in the living room. They ate popcorn and watched movies, and Chloe fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, her hand curled around his. I'm sorry, Daniel whispered into the dark. I'll do better. Monday morning brought a new crisis. Daniel was in the command center reviewing server logs when Marcus appeared at his elbow, looking pale. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? Someone's been accessing restricted files, executive-level stuff. Financial reports, proprietary research, client contracts, all of it downloaded to an external drive 2 days ago. Daniel's blood went cold. Who? We don't know yet. The access logs were scrubbed, but I found traces in the backup system. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Get me everything you have, and don't tell anyone about this until we know what we're dealing with. Marcus nodded and disappeared, and Daniel pulled up the backup logs himself. It took him 20 minutes to piece together the trail, and when he did, his stomach dropped. The breach had come from inside the company. Someone with high-level clearance had systematically downloaded sensitive data over the course of 3 weeks, covering their tracks at every step. And the last access point was Gerald Voss's terminal. Daniel sat back in his chair, his mind racing. It could be a framed job, someone using Gerald's credentials to throw suspicion off themselves. But the timing was too convenient. The attack had happened right after Daniel joined the company, right after Gerald had complained about his hiring. He needed to tell Vanessa. He found her in a meeting with the board of directors, but the assistant let him interrupt when he said it was urgent. Vanessa excused herself and followed Daniel into the hallway, her expression sharpening when she saw his face. "What is it?" "We have a leak. Someone's been stealing proprietary data for weeks, and the trail leads to Gerald." Vanessa didn't react visibly, but something cold settled behind her eyes. "You're sure?" "The access logs don't lie." Could he have been compromised? Someone using his credentials? Maybe, but given how much he's been pushing back against me, I don't think it's a coincidence. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then she said, "Can you prove it?" "Not yet, but if you give me access to his files, I can find out." "Do it, but quietly. If Gerald catches wind of this before we have evidence, he'll bury everything." Daniel went back to work, and for the next 3 days he barely slept. He dug through Gerald's digital footprint, tracked his communications, cross-referenced timestamps with security footage. It was tedious, exhausting work, but slowly the picture came together. Gerald had been selling company secrets to a competitor, not all at once, but in careful increments over 6 months. Financial projections, research data, client lists. Enough to give another company a significant advantage without triggering immediate alarms. And he'd been planning to blame the Phantom Protocol attack on an outside breach to cover his tracks. Daniel compiled everything into a report and brought it to Vanessa late on a Thursday night. She read through it in silence, her expression unreadable. "This is enough to prosecute," she said finally. "Yeah. He's been with this company for 12 years. I know." Vanessa set the report down and rubbed her temples. "I need you to be absolutely certain, Daniel. If we move on this and we're wrong, it'll destroy him. And us. I'm certain." She nodded slowly. "Then we do this tomorrow. I'll have legal and HR standing by. You present the evidence to the board, and we let them decide what happens next. Why me? Because you found it, and because they need to see that hiring you wasn't a mistake." The meeting happened at 9 the next morning in the largest conference room Sterling Dynamics had. The entire board of directors sat around the table, 10 people in suits who collectively controlled billions of dollars. And Gerald sat at the far end with his arms crossed, looking irritated. "This better be important," one of the board members said. "We have a schedule to keep." "It's important," Vanessa said. She nodded at Daniel. "Go ahead." Daniel stood up, his mouth dry, and pulled up the presentation he'd prepared. For the next 20 minutes, he walked the board through everything he'd found. The stolen files, the communication records, the money trail leading to a competitor. The evidence was damning, methodical, and impossible to refute. Gerald's face went from irritated to pale to furious in the span of 3 slides. "This is absurd," he said when Daniel finished. "You're accusing me of corporate espionage based on circumstantial evidence and logs that could easily have been fabricated." "The logs are time-stamped and backed up on multiple servers," Daniel said calmly. "And the financial transfers are real. We have bank records. This is a setup. You've had it out for me since the day you walked into this building." "Enough." Vanessa's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Gerald, do you deny accessing these files?" "I access files every day. It's my job." "Do you deny transferring company data to external drives?" Gerald hesitated, and that hesitation told Daniel everything. "I want my lawyer," Gerald said. "You can have one, after security escorts you out of the building." Vanessa turned to the board. I'm recommending immediate termination and full cooperation with law enforcement. All in favor? Every hand went up. Gerald stood up so fast his chair fell over. You're going to regret this, Vanessa. All of you. I made this company what it is. No, Vanessa said quietly. You almost destroyed it. Now leave. Security appeared from somewhere and walked Gerald out. He didn't go quietly. He shouted threats and accusations the entire way to the elevator, but Daniel barely heard it. He just felt tired. After the board members filed out, Vanessa walked over and stood beside him. You did good. Doesn't feel good. It never does. She glanced at him. Go home. Spend the weekend with Chloe. You've earned it. Daniel left the building at noon and picked Chloe up early from school. They went to the park, where she ran around on the playground while he sat on a bench and watched her laugh. For the first time in weeks, he felt like maybe he'd made the right choice. And for the first time in years, he felt like maybe things were going to be okay. You said at part 3, lưu ý, viết 7.000 đến 7.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hối thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Part 3 lưu ý, viết 7.000 đến 7.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hối thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phủ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, nhân vật không hoàn hảo. Hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương, sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sang. Có yếu tố con người. Cầm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau. Câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document. Chi đàn bắt buộc không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí. Không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Showmore 916, Claude responded. Part 3, Part 3. The weekend felt like the first full breath Daniel had taken in a month. Saturday morning, he made pancakes that came out lopsided and slightly burned, and Chloe ate them anyway while telling him about a boy in her class who'd brought a lizard to school in his backpack. Sunday, they went to the public library and checked out 6 books about space because Chloe had decided she wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. You think I could really go to space? She asked on the bus ride home, her stack of books balanced on her lap. I think you can do anything you want, even if we're not rich. Daniel looked down at her. Where'd that come from? Madison said only rich kids get to be astronauts. Her dad told her. Madison's dad is wrong. You know who the first woman in space was? Valentina Tereshkova. She grew up on a farm in Russia, worked in a textile factory. She didn't come from money, but she worked hard and she got there. Chloe thought about that for a moment. Did she have a dad? Yeah, but he died when she was little. Her mom raised her and her siblings alone. Like you raise me. Yeah, Bug, like that. Chloe leaned her head against his arm, and Daniel felt something tighten in his throat. He'd never know if he was doing this right, being both parents at once. Some days it felt like he was barely keeping them afloat. But then Chloe would say something like that, and he'd think maybe he wasn't completely failing after all. Monday morning arrived too fast. Daniel dropped Chloe at school and caught the bus to Sterling Dynamics. His stomach knotted with the low-grade anxiety that had become his baseline state. Gerald was gone, but the fallout from his arrest had spread through the company like wildfire. People whispered in hallways. Meetings got tense, and Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was waiting to see if he'd be the next person to implode. He was halfway through his second coffee when Vanessa appeared in his office doorway. Got a minute? Yeah, what's up? She closed the door behind her and sat down in one of his visitor chairs. We need to talk about the cybersecurity division. Daniel's chest tightened. Okay, Gerald managed a team of 40 people across 3 departments. With him gone, we have a leadership vacuum, and it's causing problems. People don't know who to report to. Projects are stalling. We're hemorrhaging efficiency. She looked at him steadily. I need you to take over his responsibilities. All of them? Not the espionage part, obviously. But the rest? Yes. Daniel set down his coffee before he spilled it. Vanessa, I've been here a month. I'm still learning half the systems. You want me to run the entire IT security infrastructure? Well, I want someone I trust in that position. Someone who proved they can handle a crisis. Someone who won't sell us out the second a competitor waves money in their face. She leaned forward. You're that person, Daniel. I know it's a lot, but I also know you can do it. What about the people who've been here longer? Karen's been in the division for 9 years. Marcus has more technical expertise than I do. They're going to resent me jumping the line. Let them resent you. You'll prove yourself like you did with Gerald. Vanessa stood up. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to lead. And I'm giving you the authority to build the team you need to do it. Hire people. Fire people if you have to. Restructure the whole damn department if that's what it takes. Just make sure we don't get blindsided again. Dars. She left before Daniel could argue, and he sat there staring at the closed door, feeling like he'd just been handed a grenade with the pin already pulled. By noon, word had spread. Daniel walked into the command center to find Karen waiting for him with her arms crossed. Is it true? She asked. Is what true? That you're taking over Gerald's position. Vanessa asked me to step up. Yeah. Karen studied him for a long moment. You know people are going to be pissed. I figured. You know I should have been considered for that job. I know. But you're taking it anyway. Daniel met her eyes. Yeah, I am. Because Vanessa asked me to, and because this company needs someone who's going to put the work ahead of ego. But that doesn't mean I'm doing this alone. I need people like you, people who know this place inside and out. So here's what I'm offering. You stay on as senior engineer, but I'm creating a new deputy role. Someone who can run things when I'm not here. Someone who has the institutional knowledge I don't have. Someone the team already respects. I want that person to be you. Karen blinked. You're serious? Completely. You'd report directly to me, but you'd have full authority over day-to-day operations. I need someone I can trust to tell me when I'm screwing up, and I think you're that person. Why? Because you haven't quit yet, even though you probably wanted to, and because you called me out on my first day instead of pretending everything was fine. That's the kind of honesty I need. Karen was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in. But if you start acting like Gerald, I'm out. Deal. They shook hands and Daniel felt like maybe he'd just avoided one disaster. Now he only had about 40 more to deal with. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Daniel restructured the entire security division, cutting dead weight and promoting people who'd been overlooked for years. He implemented new protocols, upgraded outdated systems, and ran drills to test the team's response time. He worked 70-hour weeks and survived on coffee and 4 hours of sleep. And every night he came home to find Chloe already asleep and Mrs. Chen sitting in his living room watching TV. You're working too much again, Mrs. Chen said one Thursday night, not looking away from her show. I know. That little girl needs her father. I know that too. Then do something about it. Daniel wanted to argue, but he was too tired. He paid Mrs. Chen, thanked her, and collapsed on the couch after she left. His phone buzzed with another work email, but he ignored it. Tomorrow. Everything could wait until tomorrow. Except tomorrow brought a new problem. Daniel was in a meeting with the executive team when his phone rang. Chloe's school. He stepped out into the hallway to answer. Mr. Hayes, this is Principal Morrison. I'm calling because Chloe got into an altercation with another student during lunch. Daniel's stomach dropped. What kind of altercation? She pushed a boy named Trevor off the playground equipment. He's fine, just shaken up. But this is the second incident this week, and I need you to come in so we can discuss her behavior. Second incident? Nobody called me about a first one. We sent an email on Tuesday. Daniel closed his eyes. Tuesday. He'd been drowning in security audits and hadn't checked his personal email in days. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He went back into the meeting, told Vanessa he had to leave, and ignored the looks from the other executives as he grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. The bus ride to Chloe's school felt like it took hours. and by the time he walked into the principal's office, his hands were shaking. Chloe sat in a chair outside the office, her face blotchy and tear-streaked. When she saw Daniel, she burst into fresh tears. "Daddy!" "It's okay, Bug. We'll figure this out." Principal Morrison was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the kind of exhausted expression that came from dealing with kids and parents for too long. She gestured for Daniel to sit, and Chloe climbed into his lap, burying her face against his chest. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Hayes. I know this is difficult, but we need to address what's been happening with Chloe. Tell me." "She's been acting out. On Tuesday, she got into a shouting match with another student during class. Today, she pushed Trevor during recess. When her teacher tried to intervene, Chloe refused to talk about what happened." Morrison folded her hands on the desk. "Mr. Hayes, is everything okay at home?" "What do you mean?" Sometimes when children experience disruptions, moves, changes in routine, parental stress, they externalize it through behavior. I'm just trying to understand what might be causing this." Daniel felt Chloe trembling against him and tightened his arms around her. "Things have been busy at work. I've been home less than I should be." "And Chloe's mother? She passed away 2 years ago." Morrison's expression softened. "I see. I'm very sorry. That explains some of this. Grief can resurface unexpectedly, especially in children." She looked at Chloe. "Sweetheart, can you tell us why you pushed Trevor?" Chloe shook her head, her face still hidden against Daniel's shirt. "Chloe," Daniel said gently, "you gotta talk to us. He said mean things." "What kind of mean things?" He said you were a bad dad because you're never at my school stuff. He said his mom saw you at the store and you looked like a homeless person. And he said..." Her voice broke. "He said my mom probably died because she didn't want to be around us anymore." Daniel's vision went red for a second, and it took everything he had not to storm out of the office and find Trevor's parents himself. "So you pushed him," Morrison said. "He deserved it." "Chloe, we've talked about this. Violence isn't... I don't care." Chloe twisted in Daniel's lap to look at the principal, her face fierce. "He was lying about my dad and my mom, and I'm not going to let him say that stuff." "Bug," Daniel said quietly. "Take a breath. I hate this school. I hate Trevor. I hate that you're always working, and I hate that Mom's dead and everything's wrong, and I just want it to stop." She dissolved into sobs, and Daniel held her while she cried, feeling like his heart was being ripped out of his chest. Morrison waited until Chloe's sobs quieted to hiccups, then said, "Mr. Hayes, I'm going to recommend Chloe meet with our school counselor. This is clearly more than just a discipline issue. She's struggling, and she needs support." "Yeah, okay, whatever she needs. And I'm going to have to suspend her for the rest of the week. School policy for physical altercations." Daniel nodded, too drained to argue. He signed the paperwork, carried Chloe out of the building, and took her home. She fell asleep on the bus with her head on his shoulder, exhausted from crying, and Daniel sat there staring out the window, trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. He'd thought taking this job would fix things. More money, more stability, a better future for Chloe. But instead, he'd traded one kind of struggle for another. He was still failing her, just in a different way. That night, after Chloe was asleep in her bed, Daniel sat at the kitchen table and called Vanessa. "I need to take the rest of the week off," he said when she answered. "What happened?" "Chloe got suspended from school. She's not okay, and I haven't been paying attention because I've been too focused on work. I need to be here." "Of course, take the time. Is there anything I can do?" "No, Daniel rubbed his face. "I don't know how to do this. Be a good father and a good employee. Every time I try to balance it, something breaks." "You're not supposed to do it alone, Daniel. I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You have a team. You have Karen. Let them carry some of the weight while you take care of your daughter. That's not fair to them." "It's not fair to Chloe if you burn yourself out trying to be everything at once." Vanessa's voice was firm. "Take the week. We'll manage. And when you come back, we're going to figure out a better system. One that doesn't require you to sacrifice your kid for your career." Daniel's throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just go be her dad. The rest of the week passed in a blur. Daniel stayed home with Chloe, and they spent the days doing things they hadn't done in months. They baked cookies that came out lumpy and ate them anyway. They built a model rocket from a kit Daniel found at the craft store. They talked about Emily, really talked, and Chloe cried and said she missed her mom, and Daniel held her and said he missed her too. On Thursday, they met with the school counselor, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, who asked Chloe gentle questions and didn't push when she didn't want to answer. Afterward, Dr. Patel pulled Daniel aside. Your daughter is carrying a lot of grief, Mr. Hayes, and a lot of anxiety about losing you, too. I'm not going anywhere, Odds. She doesn't know that. In her world, people she loves disappear. Her mom died. You're gone most of the time because of work. From her perspective, she's already losing you. The words hit like a physical blow. What do I do? Be present. Not perfect, just present. Let her know she's the priority. And consider therapy for both of you. Grief is hard enough for adults. For kids, it's overwhelming. Daniel nodded, feeling like he was drowning. Friday afternoon, he got a call from Vanessa. I need you to come in for an hour. There's something I want to show you. Vanessa, I said I needed the week. I know. This is important. Bring Chloe. Daniel almost argued, but something in her voice stopped him. He and Chloe took the bus to Sterling Dynamics, and Vanessa met them in the lobby. Come on, she said, leading them to the elevator. Where are we going? You'll see. They went up to the 19th floor, which Daniel had never visited before. Vanessa led them down a hallway to a door marked Employee Resource Center and pushed it open. Inside was a large, bright room filled with books, toys, beanbag chairs, and a couple of desks with computers. A woman in her 30s was sitting in the corner reading to a small group of kids, and two more children were playing with building blocks near the window. What is this? Daniel asked. Childcare. We've had it for years, but it's always been underutilized because nobody wanted to admit they needed it. I'm expanding the program and making it free for all employees. Vanessa looked at him. You're not the only parent in this company who's struggling to balance work and family. And I'm tired of watching good people leave because we make them choose. Daniel stared at her. You did this because of me? I did this because it's the right thing to do. But yeah, you made me realize we had a problem. She looked down at Chloe. What do you think? You want to hang out here sometimes when your dad's working? Chloe looked around the room, then up at Daniel. Can I? If you want to. There's books about space. The woman reading in the corner called over. And we're starting an astronomy club next month if you're interested. Chloe's face lit up in a way Daniel hadn't seen in weeks. Really? Really? Come look. She ran over and Daniel watched her join the other kids, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You're still going to have hard days, but at least now you have options. Vanessa turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Daniel? When you come back Monday, I'm cutting your hours. 50 a week, max. If you can't get the work done in that time, we'll hire more people. Understood? Understood. She left, and Daniel stood there watching Chloe laugh with the other kids, feeling like maybe, just maybe, things were starting to turn around. Monday morning, Daniel walked into Sterling Dynamics with Chloe beside him, and they went straight to the 19th floor. Chloe ran ahead to join the other kids, and Daniel watched her go, feeling the familiar ache of separation tempered by the knowledge that she was safe, happy. Somewhere he could reach her in 2 minutes if she needed him. He took the elevator down to his office and found Karen waiting. Welcome back. We survived without you, but barely. What'd I miss? Nothing catastrophic. Marcus upgraded the firewall protocols. We ran 3 penetration tests and passed all of them, and I fired Jenkins. Daniel blinked. You fired someone? He was slacking off and undermining team morale. You said I had authority over day-to-day operations, so I used it. Karen shrugged. If you want to overrule me, that's your call. No. You made the right decision. Thanks for handling it. She nodded and left, and Daniel sat down at his desk, feeling like maybe he'd actually built something that could function without him constantly propping it up. The morning passed quietly. Daniel reviewed reports, answered emails, and had a meeting with Vanessa about long-term security strategy. At noon, he went upstairs to have lunch with Chloe in the childcare center, and she showed him a drawing she'd made of a rocket ship with their names written on the side. "That's us," she said. "Going to the moon. It's perfect, Bug. Ms. Sterling said I can keep my drawings here if I want, so you can see them when you're working." "I'd like that." They ate sandwiches and talked about school and space and whether astronauts could bring stuffed elephants into orbit. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt like maybe he wasn't completely screwing this up. That afternoon, he was in a meeting with the IT team when his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He ignored it. 2 minutes later, it buzzed again, then a third time. Daniel excused himself and stepped into the hallway. "Hello, Daniel Hayes." "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney representing Apex Security Solutions. We need to schedule a meeting to discuss your current employment at Sterling Dynamics." Daniel's stomach turned to ice. "What about it?" "You signed a non-compete agreement when you left Apex. We have reason to believe you're violating the terms of that agreement by working for a competitor in the same field. We're prepared to pursue legal action if this isn't resolved immediately." "What? I didn't leave Apex. You fired me." "That doesn't negate the non-compete. You're in breach of contract, Mr. Hayes. I suggest you consult with your own attorney before this escalates further." The line went dead. Daniel stood there in the hallway, his hands shaking, feeling like the ground had just opened up beneath him. He went straight to Vanessa's office. She looked up from her computer when he walked in without knocking. "What's wrong?" "Apex is coming after me. They're claiming I violated a non-compete and threatening legal action." Vanessa's expression went cold. "When did you sign this non-compete?" 3 years ago, when I started. But I didn't think it was enforceable. They fired me. I didn't break the terms. Non-competes don't work that way. If you signed it, it stands regardless of who ended the employment." She stood up. "How long is the term?" 5 years from termination. "Well, which means you still have 2 years left." Vanessa swore under her breath. "They're doing this now because you just took down Gerald and proved you're a serious asset. They want to either force you out of Sterling or tie us up in litigation long enough to bleed resources." "What do I do?" "You let me handle it. I'm not letting Apex bully you out of this job because they're bitter you moved on." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling our legal team. Don't talk to anyone from Apex without a lawyer present. Understood?" "Yeah." "Daniel." Vanessa's voice softened slightly. "We're going to fight this. You're not losing this job." But as Daniel walked back to his office, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he'd built over the last 2 months was about to come crashing down. And this time he didn't know if he could stop it. "You said," Part 4, Louis, viết 7.000 đến 7.500 từ liên kết liên mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện. Pha hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Part 4, Louis, viết 7.000 đến 7.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện. Pha hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ. Phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ độ kịch tính không viết lan man, nhân vật không hoàn hảo. Hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sảng, có yếu tố con người, cẩm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau, câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document. Chi đăng bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí. Không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show more 927. Claude responded, Part 4, Part 4. The legal letter arrived 3 days later via courier, thick and official and terrifying in the way only corporate documents could be. Daniel sat at his kitchen table at 6 in the morning with Chloe still asleep in her room, reading through pages of dense legal language that all boiled down to the same threat: stop working for Sterling Dynamics or face a lawsuit that would destroy what little financial stability he'd managed to build. His hands shook as he set the letter down. The non-compete he'd signed at Apex was ironclad. 5 years, broad enough to cover any work in cybersecurity, and enforced regardless of how the employment ended. He'd signed it without thinking, back when he was young and stupid and thought companies actually cared about their employees. Now it was a weapon aimed directly at his life. His phone buzzed. Vanessa. "Did you get the letter?" she asked without preamble. "Yeah. Our attorneys reviewed it. It's legitimate. Apex has grounds to pursue this if they want to." Daniel closed his eyes. "So what now?" "Now we fight back. I've hired one of the best employment lawyers in the state. Her name is Patricia Nguyen, and she specializes in non-compete disputes. She thinks we have options." "What kind of options?" "Meet me at the office at 9. Patricia will be there and we'll go through everything." Vanessa paused. "Daniel, I meant what I said. We're not letting them take you down. They already did once. Not this time." The line went dead, and Daniel sat there staring at the letter, feeling like he was drowning. He got Chloe ready for school in a fog, barely hearing her chatter about the astronomy club. On the bus, she tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, are you okay?" "Yeah, bug. Just thinking about work stuff." "Is it bad?" He looked down at her worried face and forced a smile. "Nothing I can't handle." But the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. At Sterling Dynamics, Vanessa's conference room had been transformed into a war room. Patricia Nguyen sat at the head of the table, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen every dirty trick in the book and knew how to counter them. 2 junior associates flanked her, laptops open and ready. "Mr. Hayes," Patricia said as Daniel entered. "Sit. We have a lot to cover." Daniel sat, and Vanessa took the chair beside him. "I've reviewed your non-compete agreement," Patricia began. "It's enforceable, but it's also overreaching. 5 years is excessive for this industry. Most non-competes are 2 years maximum, and courts generally don't look kindly on agreements that prevent someone from making a living in their chosen field." "So we can fight it?" "We can. But it's going to be expensive and time-consuming, and there's no guarantee we'll win. Apex has deep pockets, and they can drag this out for years if they want to." Patricia leaned forward. "The question is, why are they doing this now? You left Apex 2 years ago. They could have come after you at any point, but they waited until you landed a high-profile position at a major competitor. That suggests this isn't about the non-compete. It's about something else. They want to hurt Sterling," Vanessa said. "Gerald was feeding them information. When Daniel exposed him, we cut off their pipeline. Now they're retaliating." "That's my read too." Patricia tapped her pen against the table. "Which means we have leverage. If we can prove Apex is using the non-compete as retaliation rather than legitimate enforcement, we can get it thrown out. But we need evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Communications between Apex and Gerald. Financial records showing they benefited from the stolen data. Anything that demonstrates a pattern of corporate espionage and retaliation." Patricia looked at Daniel. "Do you have access to any of that?" "I compiled everything when we took Gerald down. Financial transfers, email threads, data logs. It's all in the case file." "Good. I'll need copies of everything, and I'll need you to write a detailed account of what happened at Apex 3 years ago. Why you left, what they did with your research, how they treated you after your wife's diagnosis. Every detail." Daniel's stomach churned. "You want me to relive all of that?" "I want to build a case that shows Apex has a history of exploiting and retaliating against employees. That strengthens our position and makes it harder for them to claim they're just enforcing a standard agreement." "How long will this take?" "Months, maybe longer. Apex will fight hard, and they'll try to make this as painful as possible for both you and Sterling. You need to be prepared for that." Daniel looked at Vanessa. This is going to cost the company a fortune. I don't care. You should. I'm one employee. This lawsuit could... Daniel? Vanessa's voice was firm. Apex is trying to bully us because they think we'll fold rather than fight. If we let them win, it sends a message that Sterling Dynamics abandons its people the second things get difficult. I'm not doing that. Not to you, not to anyone. What if we lose? Then we lose. But we're going to make them work for it. Patricia cleared her throat. There is one other option. Apex's attorney reached out this morning with a settlement offer. If you resign from Sterling Dynamics and agree not to work in cybersecurity for the remainder of the non-compete term, they'll drop the lawsuit. The room went silent. Absolutely not, Vanessa said. But Daniel was already doing the math in his head. 2 more years of the non-compete. 2 years of finding something else to do. Some other way to support Chloe. It would mean giving up everything he'd built here, but it would also mean no lawsuit, no legal fees, no dragging Sterling Dynamics through months of expensive litigation. What happens if I say yes? Daniel asked quietly. Daniel? What happens? Patricia glanced at Vanessa, then back at Daniel. You'd sign a separation agreement, leave Sterling, and Apex drops the case. You'd be prohibited from working in cybersecurity until the non-compete expires, but you'd avoid a legal battle. And Sterling wouldn't be liable for anything. Correct. Daniel sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of it pressing down on him. I need to think about it. There's nothing to think about, Vanessa said sharply. We're fighting this. It's not your decision. You're right, it's not. But I'm telling you right now, if you walk away from this because you think you're protecting the company, you're wrong. We need you. And I'm not letting Apex take you away because they're angry we expose their corruption. Daniel met her eyes and saw something fierce there, something that looked almost personal. Why does this matter so much to you? He asked. Because I've spent 3 years building a company that doesn't treat people like disposable assets. And if I let Apex do this to you, then I failed. Not just you. Everyone who works here. Vanessa's voice dropped. You told me once that choosing your daughter wasn't a weakness, that it made you stronger. Well, choosing to fight for you makes Sterling stronger. So I'm fighting. The question is whether you're going to fight with me or let them win without a battle. Daniel looked away, his throat tight. I need to talk to Chloe. Patricia nodded. Take the day, but Apex wants an answer by Friday. That gives us 72 hours to decide. Daniel left the conference room and took the elevator up to the 19th floor. Chloe was in the corner of the Child Care Center building, a tower out of blocks with 2 other kids. She looked up when Daniel walked in and her face broke into a smile. Daddy, look how tall I made it. That's amazing, Bug. Are you done with your meeting? Yeah, can we talk for a minute? Chloe's smile faded. Is something wrong? Come here. They sat in the beanbag chairs near the window, and Daniel tried to figure out how to explain corporate lawsuits and non-compete agreements to a 7-year-old. Remember my old job, before this one? The one where they were mean to you? Yeah, they're being mean again. They're saying I'm not allowed to work here because of a paper I signed a long time ago. Chloe frowned. That's stupid. It's complicated, but it means I might have to leave this job. And go where? I don't know yet. Somewhere else. Chloe was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on the beanbag. Do you want to leave? No. Then don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Daniel struggled for words. Because if I stay, the mean people might sue us. That means we'd have to go to court and spend a lot of money, and it would be really hard for everyone. Miss Sterling said she'd fight for you. I know. So let her. Chloe looked at him with those huge brown eyes. You always tell me not to let bullies win. That's what this is, right? Bullies trying to make you leave? Yeah, Bug, that's exactly what it is. Then you have to fight them, even if it's hard, because that's what you taught me. Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. He pulled Chloe into a hug, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. When did you get so smart? He murmured. I got it from you. He laughed despite everything, and they sat there for a long moment before Chloe pulled back. Can I go finish my tower now? Yes, go ahead. She ran back to her blocks, and Daniel sat there watching her play, thinking about everything she'd been through in her short life. Emily's illness, the funeral, 2 years of barely scraping by while Daniel worked himself into exhaustion, and now this. She deserved better than a father who gave up every time things got hard. He took the elevator back down to Vanessa's office and found her at her desk, staring at her computer with an expression that suggested she was mentally composing a very angry email. "I'm staying," Daniel said from the doorway. Vanessa looked up. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He walked in and sat down. "Chloe reminded me that giving in to bullies just makes them stronger. So we fight. Whatever it takes." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression, and for just a second, she looked almost relieved. "Okay, then let's make sure we win." The next 72 hours were a blur of meetings with Patricia, drafting legal responses and compiling evidence. Daniel spent his evenings writing out everything he remembered about Apex, the way they'd stolen his research, the executives who'd promised to hold his position and then fired him 3 months after Emily died, the blacklisting that had made it impossible to find work. It all came spilling out onto the page, and by the time he finished, he felt hollowed out and raw. On Friday morning, Patricia filed their response. Sterling Dynamics would not be settling. They were countersuing Apex for tortious interference, corporate espionage, and retaliation. The legal battle had officially begun. That afternoon, Daniel got a call from a number he didn't recognize. "Daniel Hayes?" "Yeah." "This is Marcus Webb. I was VP of Operations at Apex when you worked here. I heard about the lawsuit." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" Go. "To tell you you're making a mistake. Apex doesn't lose legal battles, and you're going to get crushed. Walk away now before it gets worse." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice. You've got a kid, right? Think about what this is going to do to her. The legal fees, the stress, the public scrutiny. Is it really worth it? You people stole my work and destroyed my career because I took time off to care for my dying wife. So yeah, it's worth it." "You're being emotional. This isn't personal, Daniel. It's business. Everything's personal when it's your life they're destroying." Daniel hung up and sat there shaking with anger. The call had been a warning shot, a reminder that Apex had resources and connections Daniel couldn't match. But it had also been a mistake, because now he was even more determined to fight. Over the next month, the lawsuit consumed everything. Depositions, discovery requests, legal filings that turned Daniel's entire employment history into ammunition for both sides. Patricia was brilliant and relentless, but Apex's legal team was just as aggressive. They subpoenaed records, questioned Daniel's competence, and tried to paint him as a disgruntled employee looking for revenge. The media picked up the story. Local tech blogs ran articles about the David and Goliath lawsuit between Sterling Dynamics and Apex Security Solutions. Some portrayed Daniel as a victim of corporate abuse. Others suggested he was a troublemaker who couldn't hold down a job. The attention was overwhelming and invasive, and Daniel started avoiding social media entirely. At work, people treated him differently. Some with sympathy, others with suspicion. A few executives quietly suggested to Vanessa that maybe settling would be easier than dragging the company through a prolonged legal battle. She shut them down every time. But Daniel could feel the pressure building. The only bright spot was Chloe. The childcare center had become her sanctuary, and Dr. Patel's therapy sessions were helping her process her grief. She still had bad days, but the explosive anger had faded into something more manageable. She drew pictures of rockets and stars, talked about becoming an astronaut, and occasionally asked Daniel if the mean people were still trying to make him leave. "We're handling it," he'd say, and Chloe would nod and go back to her drawings. 6 weeks into the lawsuit, Patricia called with news. "We found something. One of Gerald's former colleagues at Apex reached out. He's willing to testify that Apex executives knew Gerald was stealing data from Sterling and actively encouraged it. He has emails to prove it." "Why would he come forward?" Daniel asked. "He got fired last week for refusing to participate in another data theft scheme. He's angry, and he wants revenge, which makes him a motivated witness." Will it be enough? It strengthens our case significantly. If we can prove Apex has a pattern of corporate espionage, It undermines their entire position on the non-compete. They can't claim they're protecting legitimate business interests if they've been stealing from competitors. When does he testify? Next month at the preliminary hearing. If the judge rules in our favor, Apex will have to either drop the case or take it to trial. And they won't want a trial. Too much exposure. Daniel felt a flicker of hope for the first time in weeks, but hope was fragile, and Apex knew how to break things. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, Daniel got a call from Chloe's school. Mr. Hayes, this is Principal Morrison. I need you to come in immediately. What happened? There's been an incident. Chloe's fine, but we need to talk. Daniel's heart hammered as he drove to the school. He found Chloe sitting outside Morrison's office, her face pale and her hands shaking. Bug, what happened? A man came to school. He said he knew you. He said he had questions about your old job. Daniel's blood went cold. What kind of questions? He asked if you talked about work at home, if you ever brought papers home, if you seemed stressed. Chloe's voice was small. I didn't know what to say, so I told my teacher, and she made him leave. Morrison appeared in the doorway. Mr. Hayes, the man claimed to be a private investigator working on a case involving you. He had credentials, but he approached Chloe directly without going through the office. That's a serious breach of protocol, and I've already reported it to the police. Did you get his name? He gave me a card. I'll forward it to you. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. Apex had sent someone to his daughter's school. They'd questioned a 7-year-old child to dig up dirt for their lawsuit. The realization made him feel physically sick. I'm taking her home, Daniel said. Of course. Mr. Hayes, I'm very sorry this happened. We've increased security, and no one will be allowed near the students without proper clearance. Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He took Chloe's hand and led her out of the building, and the entire drive home she sat in the passenger seat staring out the window, not saying a word. At the apartment, Daniel made her hot chocolate and sat beside her on the couch. I'm sorry, Bug. It's not your fault. It is, though. This lawsuit, it's making things hard for both of us, and I'm sorry you got dragged into it. Chloe was quiet for a moment, then said, The man said you did something bad at your old job, that you stole things. That's not true. I know. I told him you wouldn't do that. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. But what if other people believe him? What if everyone thinks you're bad? Then they're wrong. How do you know? Because I know who I am, and I know I didn't do anything wrong. Daniel pulled her close. Chloe, there are always going to be people who lie about you. People who try to make you look bad because it benefits them. But the truth is still the truth, even if nobody believes it. And the people who matter, the people who love you, they'll know the difference. Miss Sterling believes you. Yeah, she does. Do you love her? The question caught Daniel completely off guard. What? Daughters. You talk about her a lot, and she's always helping us. I just wondered if maybe you loved her. Daniel felt his face heat. It's not like that, Bug. She's my boss. But she's nice, and she makes you smile. That doesn't mean... Daniel stopped, realizing he was arguing with a 7-year-old about feelings he hadn't even admitted to himself. It's complicated. Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to answer. She was right, but Daniel wasn't ready to unpack what it meant that Vanessa Sterling had become someone he thought about late at night when he couldn't sleep. Someone whose opinion mattered more than it probably should. Someone who'd fought for him when no one else would. Come on, he said, deflecting. Let's watch a movie. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, and Daniel tried to ignore the investigator's card burning a hole in his pocket. The next morning, he walked into Patricia's office and slammed the card down on her desk. Apex sent a private investigator to Chloe's school. Patricia's expression darkened. When? Yesterday. He questioned her directly without permission. The school reported it to the police. That's witness intimidation, possibly harassment of a minor. We can use this. I want to destroy them. We will, but you need to stay calm. Don't do anything that gives them ammunition. Patricia picked up the card. I'll contact the investigators firm and make it very clear that any further contact with your daughter will result in additional legal action. It's not enough. I know, he eats. But it's what we have right now. But yours, been said. Daniel left the office feeling like he was coming apart at the seams. He'd spent 2 months fighting this lawsuit, watching it consume his time and energy and peace of mind. And now Apex had gone after Chloe. He found Vanessa in her office and told her everything. They crossed a line, she said, her voice cold and furious. They went after your kid. I know, We're escalating. I'm calling in every favor I have, every connection, every resource. Apex wants to play dirty? Fine. We'll show them what dirty looks like. Vanessa, no, I'm done playing nice. They made this personal the second they involved Chloe. She stood up and paced to the window. I'm authorizing Patricia to go after them for harassment, intimidation, and anything else she can think of. And I'm reaching out to other companies Apex has screwed over. If they have a pattern of this behavior, we're going to expose it. Daniel watched her stand there, backlit by the city skyline, and realized Chloe had been right. He did love Vanessa Sterling, not in some dramatic, earth-shattering way, but in the quiet, steady way you loved someone who saw you at your worst and decided you were worth fighting for anyway. Thank you, he said. Vanessa turned to look at him, and something passed between them, an understanding, an acknowledgement of everything they'd been through together. You don't have to thank me, she said. This is what we do. We fight for each other. The preliminary hearing happened on a cold morning in late November. Daniel sat beside Patricia in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and tension, watching Apex's legal team file in like sharks circling prey. Vanessa sat in the gallery behind him, a silent presence that steadied his nerves. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Patricia presented evidence of Apex's corporate espionage, Gerald's testimony about their involvement, and the investigators' harassment of Chloe. Apex's attorneys argued that the non-compete was legitimate and that Daniel had violated it knowingly. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that gave nothing away, listened to both sides without interruption. At the end, she set down her pen and looked directly at Apex's lead attorney. Counselor, I've reviewed the evidence and I'm troubled by what I see. Your client is attempting to enforce a non-compete agreement while simultaneously engaging in what appears to be corporate espionage and witness intimidation. That undermines your entire position. The attorney started to object, but the judge held up a hand. I'm not ruling on the merits of the case today, but I am ordering both parties to mediation. You have 30 days to reach a settlement. If you can't, we'll proceed to trial. And I'm warning you now, if I see any more evidence of harassment or intimidation, I will sanction your client. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor, both attorneys said in unison. The gavel came down, and it was over. Outside the courtroom, Patricia looked cautiously optimistic. Mediation is good. It means the judge thinks Apex's case is weak. If we push hard enough, they'll settle. What kind of settlement? Daniel asked. Best case? They drop the non-compete entirely and agree not to pursue further action. Worst case? You agree to a shorter non-compete term, maybe 6 months, and both sides walk away. I want them to drop it completely. So do I. And I think we have a shot. Daniel looked at Vanessa, who'd been silent through the whole exchange. What do you think? He asked. I think we're close to winning, and I think Apex knows it. The mediation happened 3 weeks later in a neutral office building with a mediator who looked like. She'd spent 40 years dealing with corporate lawyers and had lost all patience for their nonsense. Apex's team came in with aggressive posturing and demands, but Patricia met them blow for blow. The negotiation lasted 6 hours. Daniel sat in a side room with Vanessa, waiting while the lawyers battled it out, feeling like his entire future was being decided by people who didn't know him and didn't care. Finally, Patricia emerged. We have an offer. Apex will drop the non-compete entirely in exchange for a mutual non-disparagement agreement. Neither side can publicly discuss the lawsuit or the circumstances surrounding it. You keep your job, they save face, and it's over. Daniel stared at her. That's it? That's it. They know they're losing, and they want to cut their losses before it gets worse. What about an apology for what they did to Chloe? They won't give one. I tried, but this is the best we're going to get. Daniel looked at Vanessa. What do you think? I think you've spent 2 months fighting for something you deserve from the start, and I think it's time to let yourself win. He thought about Chloe waiting for him at home, about the childcare center and the job he'd almost lost, about everything Vanessa and Patricia and Sterling Dynamics had done to fight for him when he'd been ready to give up. Okay, he said, I'll sign. The paperwork was finalized that evening, and by the time Daniel left the building, it was fully dark outside. Vanessa walked him to his car, and they stood there in the parking garage, not quite ready to say goodbye. You did it, Vanessa said. We did it. Fair enough. She smiled, and Daniel realized it was the first time he'd seen her genuinely smile in weeks. What are you going to do now? Pick up Chloe. Order pizza. Maybe watch a movie where nobody sues anybody. Sounds perfect. They stood there for another moment, and Daniel felt the words building in his chest. Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. I don't know how to repay you, but none of them felt big enough. Vanessa, ikokore. Don't, she said gently. You don't have to say anything. Just go home to your daughter and be happy. Okay. He got in his car and drove home, and when he walked through the door, Chloe ran to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. Did you win? She asked. Yeah, Bug, we won. Does that mean the mean people are gone? They're gone. Chloe squeezed tighter. Good. Now, can we have pizza? Daniel laughed, the sound surprising him with how light it felt. Yeah, we can have pizza. And for the first time in months, the weight pressing down on his chest finally started to lift. You said, Part 5. Lưu ý. Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hội thoại tạo thành một câu liền mạch khi ghép lại. Part 5. Lưu ý. Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hội thoại tạo thành một câu liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyển uyển ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột. Không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, có quan điểm cá nhân, thông điệp, bài học, góc nhìn con người. Nhân vật không hoàn hảo, hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sang. Có yếu tố con người, cầm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Phần 5 giải quyết hết vấn đề và kết thúc trọn vẹn câu chuyện. Câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa. Lưu ý, trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document. Chi đàn bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí. Không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show more 936. Claude responded, Part 5. Part 5. 3 months after the lawsuit ended, Daniel stood in front of his team in the command center and realized he'd stopped looking over his shoulder, waiting for everything to fall apart. All right, people, he said, pulling up the quarterly security report on the main screen. We had 0 major breaches, 3 minor incidents that we contained in under an hour, and our response time is down by 40% from last quarter. That's good work. Karen raised her hand from the back. Does this mean we get bonuses? Talk to Vanessa about that. I just run the tech side. You're the head of security. That makes you responsible for morale too. Fine, I'll talk to her, but if she says no, you're all buying me coffee for a month. The team laughed, and Daniel dismissed them, feeling something that might have been contentment settle in his chest. The work was still hard, the hours still long, but he'd learned how to set boundaries. He left at 5 most days. He had lunch with Chloe in the childcare center. He stopped checking his email at midnight and started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Small victories, but they added up. He was heading back to his office when his phone buzzed. Chloe's school, but not the emergency number. He answered anyway. Mr. Hayes, this is Miss Patterson from the front office. Nothing's wrong. But we wanted to let you know that Chloe's science project won first place at the district fair. The awards ceremony is this Friday at 6 if you'd like to attend." Daniel felt a grin spread across his face. "I'll be there. Thank you." He hung up and immediately texted Vanessa. Chloe won first place at the science fair, taking Friday afternoon off for the ceremony. The reply came fast. "Congratulations to her. Take the whole day if you want." Daniel pocketed his phone and went to find Chloe in the childcare center. She was sitting at one of the desks working on homework with her tongue stuck out in concentration, and when she saw him, her face lit up. "Daddy, I got an A on my math test." "That's great, Bug. I also heard some other good news." "About what?" "About a certain science project involving rocket propulsion and homemade launch systems." Chloe's eyes went wide. "I won first place in the whole district." She screamed and launched herself at him, and Daniel caught her, spinning her around while the other kids in the center clapped and cheered. "Can we call Mrs. Chen and tell her?" Chloe asked when he set her down. "We can call whoever you want." Sami. They spent the next hour making phone calls, and Daniel watched Chloe's joy overflow in a way he hadn't seen since before Emily died. Dr. Patel had been right about the therapy helping, but this was different. This was Chloe remembering how to be a kid again, how to celebrate good things without waiting for the other shoe to drop. That evening, after Chloe fell asleep clutching her elephant and dreaming about rockets, Daniel sat on the couch with a beer he barely touched and thought about how much had changed in 6 months. The lawsuit, the job, the slow, careful reconstruction of a life that felt sustainable instead of desperate. His phone buzzed. "Vanessa, you still up?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Just wanted to check in. You've been quiet this week." Daniel stared at the message, trying to figure out what to say. The truth was, he'd been avoiding Vanessa outside of work meetings because every time they were alone together, he felt that pull toward something he didn't know how to name. Chloe had asked if he loved her, and Daniel had deflected, but the question had stuck in his head like a song he couldn't stop humming. "Just been busy." Chloe's science fair project was consuming all our free time. She must be excited about winning. Over the moon. She wants to build a rocket big enough to actually fly in now. Of course she does. "Let me know if you need funding for that project." Daniel smiled despite himself. "You don't have to bankroll my daughter's astronaut dreams." "I know, but I want to." He typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, "Thank you for everything. Not just this, but all of it." There was a long pause, and Daniel wondered if he'd said too much. Then his phone rang. "I figured talking was easier than texting," Vanessa said when he answered. "Yeah, probably." Daniel set down his beer. "What's up?" "I wanted to ask you something, and I didn't want to do it over text because it needs context." "Okay." The board is creating a new position, Chief Security Officer. It's a VP-level role with full oversight of all IT security operations, physical security, and risk management. They want someone who understands both the technical side and the human side of security. Someone who's proven they can handle pressure and make hard calls. She paused. "They want to offer it to you." Daniel's brain stuttered. "VP level?" "Yes, that's... Vanessa, I've been here 6 months. Yeah. And in that time, you've completely overhauled our security infrastructure, exposed a major corporate espionage operation, fought off a lawsuit that could have destroyed your career, and built a team that actually functions instead of just existing. You've earned this." "What about the people who've been here longer? Karen's been doing this for 9 years. Karen is excellent at her job, and I'm promoting her to Director of Network Operations. She'll report to you, and she's already agreed to it. This isn't about seniority, Daniel. It's about who's the right person for the role." Daniel stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. A VP position meant more money, more responsibility, more everything. It meant security for Chloe, college savings, maybe even buying a house someday instead of renting a 1-bedroom apartment where they could hear the neighbors fighting through the walls. But it also meant pressure, expectations, the weight of knowing that if he failed, it wouldn't just affect him. "What if I can't do it?" he asked quietly. "Then you'll figure it out, just like you figured out everything else." Vanessa's voice softened. I wouldn't be offering this if I didn't believe you could handle it. But I need to know if you want it, because if you don't, that's okay. You can stay where you are, and nobody will think less of you. Do you want me to take it? Yes. But not because I need a chief security officer. Because I think you deserve to build something bigger than what you've already built. And because I want to see what you'll do when you're not just surviving anymore. Daniel closed his eyes and thought about the man who'd walked into Sterling Dynamics 6 months ago, wearing a 5-year-old shirt and holding his daughter's hand, desperate and exhausted and convinced he'd never belong in a place like this. That man was gone. He'd been replaced by someone who knew how to fight, how to lead, how to stand up when the world tried to push him down. Okay, Daniel said. I'll do it. Good. We'll make the announcement Monday. And Daniel? Yeah? Congratulations. Monday morning, Daniel walked into a board meeting where 10 executives in expensive suits formally offered him the position of chief security officer. He signed the contract, shook hands with people whose names he'd memorized specifically for this moment, and tried not to look like he was about to throw up from nerves. Afterward, Vanessa pulled him aside. There's one more thing. The role comes with an executive parking spot, a bigger office, and an assistant if you want one. But there's also a catch. What kind of catch? You're part of the executive team now. That means board meetings, strategy sessions, and corporate events, including the annual gala in 2 weeks. Daniel's stomach dropped. Gala? Black tie, fancy dinner, donors, investors, and too many people pretending to like each other. It's awful, but it's mandatory for VPs. I don't own a tux. Rent one and bring a date if you want. Chloe's invited too, if she's interested. To a corporate gala? We have a kids program, supervised activities, dinner, movies. Some of the other executives bring their children. Chloe might enjoy it. Daniel nodded slowly, already dreading the event. Okay, I'll figure it out. Good. And Daniel? Vanessa smiled. Try to enjoy this. You earned it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of transition meetings, press releases, and Daniel trying to wrap his head around the fact that he now had a parking spot with his name on it. Karen took over most of his day-to-day responsibilities, which freed him up to focus on bigger picture strategy, and the team adjusted faster than he'd expected. The night of the gala, Daniel stood in his bathroom trying to tie a bow tie for the 4th time and failing miserably. Chloe appeared in the doorway wearing a dark blue dress that misses. Chen had helped her pick out, her hair pulled back with a clip shaped like a star. You look nice, Daddy. I look like I'm pretending to be someone else. Sterling says fancy clothes are just costumes. She said the real you is underneath, so it doesn't matter what you wear. When did she tell you that? Last week when I asked if I had to wear a dress. She said I could wear pants if I wanted, but I picked the dress because it has pockets. Chloe demonstrated by shoving her hands into the hidden pockets, and Daniel laughed despite his nerves. Come here, help me with this thing. Bus. Chloe climbed onto the bathroom counter and took over the bow tie, her small fingers surprisingly deft. YouTube taught me. You watched a YouTube tutorial on bow ties? I wanted to help. Well, Daniel felt his throat tighten. You're the best kid in the world. You know that? I know. She finished the tie and patted it into place. There. Now you look like a boss. I am a boss. Then act like it. They took a cab to the hotel where the gala was being held, and Daniel felt more out of place with every block they traveled. The hotel lobby was all marble and gold, and the ballroom where the event was happening looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with white tablecloths, a live band playing jazz near the back. Daniel spotted Vanessa almost immediately. She was standing near the bar talking to a group of investors, wearing a black dress that was elegant and understated and made Daniel forget how to breathe for a second. That's Miss Sterling, Chloe whispered. She looks pretty. Yeah, she does. You should tell her. Bug, I'm just saying. It's polite. Before Daniel could argue, Vanessa turned and saw them. She excused herself from the investors and walked over, and Daniel tried very hard not to stare. You made it, Vanessa said. Barely. I almost gave up on the bow tie. Chloe helped, Chloe announced. I watched a tutorial. Very resourceful. Vanessa smiled at her, then looked at Daniel. You both look great. You too. Daniel said and immediately felt like an idiot. I mean, not too. Also, you also look great. Nice. The dress is, Thank you, Vanessa said, saving him from further embarrassment. Chloe, the kids' program is in the room next door. Want me to show you? Can I, Daddy? Must, Papa. Yeah, go ahead. I'll check on you in a bit. Vanessa led Chloe away, and Daniel stood there trying to remember how to be a normal human being around someone he maybe had feelings for. Possibly. Probably. The gala itself was exactly as painful as Vanessa had warned. Daniel made small talk with donors who asked intrusive questions about his background, smiled through speeches about corporate responsibility and innovation, and tried not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. But every time he glanced over and saw Vanessa across the room, he felt a little less like an imposter. 2 hours in, he excused himself to check on Chloe and found her in the kids' room playing board games with 3 other children while a coordinator supervised. Having fun? Daniel asked. Yeah, this is way better than the boring adult stuff. Agreed. You need anything? Nope. Go back to your party. Daniel kissed the top of her head and returned to the ballroom, where Vanessa found him almost immediately. Chloe doing okay? But she's thriving. Apparently this is way better than the boring adult stuff. She's not wrong. Vanessa glanced around the room. Want to get some air? There's a terrace. Come on. They slipped out through a side door onto a stone terrace overlooking the city. The night air was cool and quiet, and Daniel felt like he could breathe again. I hate these things, Vanessa said, leaning against the railing. But they're part of the job. How many of these have you done? Too many. My father used to drag me to them when I was a kid. I'd sit at the kids' table and count down the minutes until we could leave. What was he like? Your father. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Brilliant. Demanding. He built sterling dynamics from nothing, and he expected everyone around him to work as hard as he did, including me. Is that why you took over the company? Partly, but also because I wanted to prove I could do it better. He ran this place like a machine, efficient, profitable, but cold. People were just resources to be optimized. I wanted to build something different, a company where people mattered as much as the bottom line. You did, Daniel said. You built exactly that. Vanessa looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. You really believe that? Right? Shit, you're right. Yeah. You gave me a job when nobody else would. You fought for me when it would have been easier to let me go. You created childcare and flexible hours, and a culture where people don't have to choose between their work and their lives. That's not just different from your father. It's the opposite. It's still not perfect. I'm still learning. Nobody's perfect, but you're trying, and that matters. They stood there in the quiet, and Daniel felt the space between them shrink. He thought about Chloe's question, "Do you love her?" and realized the answer had stopped being complicated somewhere along the way. Daniel, I need to tell you something, he said, cutting her off before he lost his nerve. And if this is completely out of line, just say so, and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. Okay, I think I have feelings for you. Not just gratitude or professional respect or whatever. Actual feelings. And I've been trying to ignore them because you're my boss and this could make everything complicated and I don't want to mess up what we've built. But I'm also tired of pretending I don't feel this way. The words hung in the air between them, and Daniel's heart hammered so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Vanessa didn't move for a long moment. Then she said, I have feelings for you too. You do? Yes. I have since the day you stopped that cyber attack with your daughter sitting beside you drawing pictures. Maybe even before that. She took a breath. She took a second. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to put you in a position where you felt obligated. You work for me. That creates a power imbalance, and I never want you to feel like you can't say no. I'm not saying no. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, we can't uncross it. And if it doesn't work out, it could make everything harder. Daniel thought about Emily. About the 2 years he'd spent alone convincing himself he'd never find someone who could understand what it meant to love a person who came with a kid and a complicated past. And then he thought about Vanessa standing beside him through the lawsuit, fighting for him when he'd been ready to give up, seeing him not as someone broken, but as someone worth believing in. I'm sure, he said. Geet, he said. Vanessa smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Daniel forget they were standing on a terrace at a corporate gala surrounded by people who'd judge them if they knew. Then I guess we're doing this. I guess we are. She kissed him, and it was soft and tentative and absolutely terrifying in the best possible way. When they pulled apart, Vanessa laughed quietly. We're going to have to tell HR. That's your biggest concern right now? I'm a CEO. Compliance is always my biggest concern. Fair enough. They went back inside, and Daniel felt like the world had shifted slightly off its axis in a way that made everything make more sense. They stayed at the gala for another hour, mingling and making small talk, and nobody seemed to notice that something fundamental had changed between them, except Chloe. When Daniel picked her up from the kids' room at the end of the night, she took one look at his face and grinned. You told her. Told who what? Ms. Sterling, that you like her. I can tell because you're smiling different. Daniel sighed. You're too smart for your own good. Does this mean she's going to be my new mom? Bug, it's not that simple. I know, but maybe someday? Maybe someday, and so. Chloe seemed satisfied with that answer, and they rode home in the cab with her chattering about the games she'd played and the other kids she'd met. Daniel listened and watched the city lights blur past the window, thinking about how strange life was. 6 months ago, he'd been broke and desperate and convinced the world had no place for someone like him. Now he had a job he loved, a daughter who was thriving, and a woman who looked at him like he was worth the trouble. Over the next few months, Daniel and Vanessa figured out what it meant to navigate a relationship while working together. They were careful about boundaries, professional in meetings, and honest with HR about the situation. Some people in the company whispered about favoritism and inappropriate relationships, but most just accepted it as part of the weirdness that came with Sterling dynamics under Vanessa's leadership. Chloe adored Vanessa. She started calling her V because Ms. Sterling felt too formal, and Vanessa didn't correct her. They'd have dinners together, the three of them, where Chloe would talk about school and space and her dreams of becoming an astronaut, and Vanessa would listen like it was the most important conversation in the world. One Saturday, Vanessa took them to a science museum where Chloe spent 4 hours asking questions and staring at exhibits with the kind of wonder that made Daniel's chest ache. Afterward, they got ice cream and Chloe fell asleep in the back seat of Vanessa's car with chocolate smudged on her chin. She's a good kid, Vanessa said quietly as they drove home. She is. Emily would be proud of her. She'd be proud of you too. Daniel glanced at her. You think? I know. You've given Chloe a life full of love and opportunity despite everything you've been through. That's not easy. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done. I know, but you did it. And you're still doing it. They pulled up in front of Daniel's apartment, and he carried Chloe inside while Vanessa followed. They got Chloe into bed without waking her, and then Daniel and Vanessa sat on the couch in the quiet apartment, not quite ready to say goodnight. Do you ever think about the future? Vanessa asked. Like what? Like where we're going. You, me, Chloe? What this looks like a year from now, 5 years from now. Daniel thought about it. I think about it sometimes. But mostly, I'm just trying to get through today without screwing up. You're not screwing up. I'm doing my best, but that doesn't always feel like enough. Vanessa took his hand. It is enough. And for what it's worth, I think about the future too. I think about what it would be like to build something together. Not just at work, but in life. A family. You want that? With us? I want that with you. Both of you. Daniel felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like hope mixed with fear, mixed with the kind of cautious optimism that comes from surviving enough disasters to know that good things can disappear. I want that too, he said, but I need you to know what you're signing up for. Chloe's going to have hard days. I'm going to have hard days. We're still figuring out how to live without Emily, and that's not going to be neat or easy. I'm not asking for neat or easy. I'm asking for real. And that's what you've given me since the day we met. Daniel kissed her, and it felt like a promise neither of them was quite ready to put into words yet. A year later, Daniel stood in the lobby of Sterling Dynamics watching Chloe run ahead to the childcare center, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She was 8 now, taller and more confident, still obsessed with space, but also developing interests in coding and robotics and a dozen other things that changed weekly. Karen appeared beside him with a coffee. "Morning, boss." "Morning? Everything good with the system upgrade?" "Flawless. Your team knows what they're doing." "Our team?" Fair enough." Karen sipped her coffee. "You coming to the security briefing at 10? "Wouldn't miss it." She walked off and Daniel took the elevator up to his office, which still felt too big and too nice even after a year. He had a view of the city, a coffee machine that made better drinks than most cafes, and a photo on his desk of him, Chloe, and Vanessa at the park from last weekend. His phone buzzed. "Vanessa. Lunch today?" "Can't. I have the quarterly review with the board. Dinner then? My place. I'm cooking. You cook now?" "I'm learning. Don't judge." Daniel smiled and pocketed his phone, feeling that same steady contentment that had become his baseline over the past year. The work was still demanding, the hours still long, but he'd learned how to balance it. He'd built a team that could function without him micromanaging every detail. He'd proven to himself and everyone else that being a good father and a good executive weren't mutually exclusive. And he'd learned that choosing the people you love wasn't a weakness. It was the only thing that mattered. That evening, Daniel and Chloe showed up at Vanessa's apartment with a bottle of wine and low expectations for the meal. Vanessa answered the door wearing an apron and looking slightly frazzled. "I may have overestimated my cooking abilities." "What are we having?" Chloe asked. "Pasta, I think. It's either pasta or a culinary disaster. We'll find out together." The meal turned out to be edible, if slightly overcooked, and they ate it at Vanessa's dining table while Chloe told them about a boy in her class who'd brought a snake to school in his lunchbox. After dinner, Chloe curled up on the couch to watch a movie, and Daniel helped Vanessa clean up in the kitchen. "I have something to ask you," Vanessa said as she dried a plate, "and I want you to think about it before you answer. Okay? I've been looking at houses, bigger places with yards and space for Chloe to grow up, and I wondered if maybe you'd want to look with me. Not as something I'm doing alone, but as something we're doing together." Daniel set down the dish he was washing. "You mean move in together?" "Eventually, yeah. I'm not saying we have to decide right now, but I'm tired of splitting time between 2 apartments. I want us to be a family, Daniel, a real one. And I think Chloe wants that too." "Did she say that?" "She asked me last week if I was going to marry you." "What'd you tell her?" "That I'd have to ask you first." Daniel turned to face her fully, water dripping from his hands onto the floor. "Are you asking me?" "Not yet, but I'm thinking about it, and I wanted to know if you'd be open to the idea when I do." Daniel thought about Emily, about the life they'd built together before cancer took her away. He thought about the years of grief and struggle that had followed, the slow rebuilding of something he'd thought was permanently broken. And he thought about Chloe asking if Vanessa was going to be her new mom, not with sadness, but with hope. "Yeah," he said. "I'd be open to it." "What?" Vanessa smiled, and Daniel pulled her into a hug, and they stood there in the kitchen with dish soap on their hands and a movie playing in the other room, building something neither of them had expected to find. 6 months later, they moved into a house with a yard and enough bedrooms for Chloe to have her own space and Daniel to have a home office. Chloe picked out paint colors for her room, dark blue with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, and spent weeks arranging her books and toys and model rockets. Daniel stood in the doorway one evening watching her adjust a poster of the solar system, and she looked back at him with Emily's eyes. "You think Mom would like this house?" Chloe asked. "Yeah, Bug. I think she'd love it." "You think she's mad that Via's here?" "No, I think she'd be happy that we found someone who loves us." Chloe nodded, satisfied with that answer, and went back to her decorating. A month later, Vanessa proposed on a Saturday morning in the kitchen while they were making pancakes. It wasn't dramatic or planned. She just looked at Daniel and said, "I want to marry you." And Daniel said yes before she'd even finished pulling the ring out of her pocket. They got married 6 months after that in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Chloe was the flower girl, and she took the job very seriously, practicing her walk down the aisle for weeks beforehand. On the day of the wedding, she wore a dress with pockets and a crown of flowers in her hair, and she smiled so wide Daniel thought his heart might burst. During the reception, Chloe pulled Daniel aside. "Daddy, does this mean V is officially my mom now?" "If you want her to be." "I do. But I still remember my first mom. Is that okay?" "That's more than okay, Bug. You can love both of them. Love doesn't run out." Chloe hugged him tight, and Daniel held her, thinking about how far they'd come from that desperate morning when he'd walked into Sterling Dynamics holding her hand and hoping for a miracle. They'd gotten more than a miracle. They'd gotten a second chance, a family, a life that wasn't perfect but was real and hard-fought and worth every struggle it had taken to build. Later, after the guests had left and Chloe had fallen asleep in the car on the drive home, Daniel and Vanessa stood in their kitchen unpacking leftovers and talking about honeymoon plans. "You know what I've been thinking?" Vanessa said. "What?" "Oh, that story you told me once, about choosing your daughter over everything else. You said the executives at Apex thought that made you weak." "I remember. They were wrong. That choice made you stronger than anyone in that building, stronger than me even, because you knew what mattered and you fought for it when it would have been easier to give up." She set down the container she was holding. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I was good enough to run my father's company. But watching you with Chloe taught me that being good enough isn't the point. Being present is. Being willing to show up even when it's hard. That's what makes someone worth following." Daniel crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms. "You were always worth following. I just got lucky that you were willing to fight for someone like me. Someone like you is exactly who I was looking for. I just didn't know it until you walked into that lobby." They stood there holding each other in their kitchen in their house with their daughter asleep upstairs, and Daniel thought about all the things he wanted to say, about second chances and chosen families and the ways people can save each other without even meaning to. But in the end, he didn't need to say any of it, because Vanessa already knew, and that was enough. Years from now, when Chloe was older and Daniel looked back on this part of his life, he'd remember a few things above all else. He'd remember the day he walked into Sterling Dynamics with nothing but desperation and a 7-year-old's hand in his. He'd remember the moment Vanessa gave him a chance when nobody else would. He'd remember fighting a lawsuit that tried to take away everything he'd built and winning because he refused to give up. But mostly, he'd remember learning that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up when the world tries to keep you there. It's about choosing the people you love even when that choice costs you everything. It's about building a life that's messy and imperfect and real. Because perfect lives don't exist, and pretending they do only makes the hard days harder. Daniel had spent years believing he was broken, that losing Emily had left him with pieces that would never fit back together right. But he'd been wrong. He wasn't broken. He was changed. And change, it turned out, wasn't the same thing as damage. He'd built something new from the ruins of what he'd lost. Not a replacement, but something different. Something that honored where he'd been while making space for where he was going. And in the end, that was the only kind of happy ending worth having. One where you showed up, did the work, and fought for the people who mattered. Everything else was just details.